Okay, everyone. Hi, welcome. This is the OC Chat Bar Brunch Hour with your favorite barista and bartender. We're here to educate, inform, and advise our bar patrons with a mix of fun and humor. So pour up your libations, whether it's coffee, water, tea, or tequila. My name is Celeste.
My name is Otasha.
Yeah, thanks for coming back, you guys. So I just wanted to start this episode with some house rules. So please remember this is a phobia-free space. No homophobia, no racism, no sexism, none of that shit. Don't bring it over here. Um,
Mhm.
and please respond with grace. It's okay to disagree with what we have to say, but respond gracefully and behave respectfully, regardless of if you disagree or not. Um, just a disclaimer to everyone listening. We're both the hosts of the OC Chat Bar. We're not licensed therapists, we're not journalists, counselors, and we hope that our conversations are a good start-off point for your consideration. So if you need professional support, please seek professional support. We hope that you guys enjoyed our last podcast episodes on problematic faves. If you didn't listen to it, please listen to it. It's called Problematic Faves, our first episode. You could catch it on YouTube. But we've received some really great feedback that we're going to incorporate it moving forward, and hopefully to make it a better listening experience for you guys. We'll implement it. So first, we're just going to do a little bit more of an introduction to who we are.
All right, so hi everyone, I'm Otasha. My name is Otasha, and I worked in the field of education for almost a decade and would love to see more of the world. As I've traveled in the past and would love for this podcast to help me develop a thoughtful community and help me see more of the world as well and achieve that goal. And my favorite color is red, so there's a little tad bit about me.
So my name is, that's awesome. My name is Celeste. I am a legally blind copywriter, an accessibility-driven storyteller. I've worked a ton of jobs in the last 10 years, but generally my experience is really helping organizations and small businesses communicate with clarity and inclusion. And I've built a lot of soft skills on how to connect with people, which instilled my interest in podcasting. And I like to cook, so that's about it. That's a bit about me. Us.
Awesome. All right, so next we're going to move into the espresso shots. And part of the feedback we got was that we need to break down some of the segments so you guys have a better understanding. So apologies for that. So the espresso shot sections are just like quick questions that we use to warm up the listeners and warm ourselves up as well as the speakers or your bartenders and barista. And so the first espresso shot the question is, work husbands and work wives, appropriate or strange? Is something missing at home? Why you need to have one? Celeste, what are your thoughts?
I think it's yeah, I think it's a strange concept. I remember
Mm-hmm.
hearing about it. It always seemed like it's just a strange concept. Like, why do you need a work husband or a work wife? Can't they just be your friendly coworkers? It's a bit strange. What are your ideas on it?
When when I was younger, I thought it was cutesy tootsy. But as I got older, I was kind of the mind of like, I work for my title as wife. If I ever become somebody's wife, I don't want nobody else sharing that title with me. You're not doing what I'm doing.
Mm,
I'm not supposed to do what I'm doing. So, like you
hmm
said, why can't you just be work friends? Why does it have to be like a title such as that, especially if you're in a relationship? Now, if you're not in a relationship, it's free game. I totally understand it. But I feel
hmm
like it's too much when you're not a single man or woman.
mm,
It's too much.
hmm hmm
So that's my take on that. And please, patrons, feel free to drop it in the chat and comment what you think. Or do you think the work husband and work wife dynamic is appropriate or strange? Is there something that crosses the line for you? Let us know in the comments.
It also speaks to the fact that we're at work constantly. So we're set to work so much that we have those kind of relationships or feel comfortable having those kind of relationships. I think that's strange.
Yeah, that's so true. We do spend a large part of our day at work, 8 hours
Mm-hmm.
minimum. So that's 8 hours you're spending with this person, calling them your wife and your husband. And for everybody else to hear, I don't think that's appropriate nor professional,
Yeah,
but here we are.
here we are. Here we are.
Right? And then the
Great.
second question, do you have to be fully healed to be in a relationship?
Hmm.
I've heard this go both ways. I've heard people say, like, you have to be healed, you have to learn to love yourself first. And I do think those things are important. But I think if
Mhm.
you're actively working on it, I think if you're actively working on it and you can name what's going on and seek the help that you need and you're not dumping on the person, I don't think you have to be 100% healed. Because I
Mhm.
also think when you're in a relationship, that's sometimes when you learn what's broken or what needs to be fixed, if you will,
Mhm.
because now you're with somebody else and you're realizing like what's new on your canvas, what's been taken away from your canvas, if you will, because a relationship paints on you, if you will, you know what I mean? And
Mm.
so when you're in a new relationship, you kind of start to like assess your canvas once again, like, oh wow, I didn't realize that piece of me was gone, or oh wow, I didn't realize this piece of me was here now. And so you have to assess that with the current relationship and current partner or partners, as some people are poly. So I feel like you don't have to be 100% healed, but I do feel like you have to actively be working on it. If not, then
Mhm.
you shouldn't be in a relationship.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with everything that you've said. It seems like it's a lot of internal healing that needs to happen, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious about if it's just internal or could it be like this sounds kind of a bit heady, but like healing financially. Say that you had like a I don't know, you spent
Mm.
a or a, spent a lot of money on something, or you made a really big financial mistake. Can you still be out there dating people while recovering from this financial mistake, whatever that is? It could go all
Oh,
kinds of ways.
it can go all kinds of ways. That's so true. If you're not financially stable, should you be out there dating? I know I've
Mhm,
felt a time or two like that. You shouldn't.
mhm,
Or rather, if you're asking for somebody who is, then you yourself need to be as well. So
mhm,
I've been of two minds about that myself.
mhm. But to our bar patrons, please let us know what you guys think. This is our two shots today. So let us know what you think about our questions.
Yes, please do. We would love to hear your comments. It really helps us to gauge where we are with these questions and how you guys feel about them.
Yeah, and we're going to move to our shakers and stirs, which is our controversial topics that shake things up and make us think. So I wanted to ask Otasha,
Mm-hmm.
I know that we kind of did research behind this, but when you think of sex tourism, what kind of goes through your mind, or what are some of the things that you think about?
When I hear sex tourism, I think of people with more money and power traveling to places where there's not as much privilege and taking
Mhm,
advantage of that demographic. I
mhm,
also think of, unfortunately, children, and in full on trigger warning, like Celeste said, we're going to be going through some intense things today, most
mhm,
likely touching on some intense topics. But like, there's also the issue of like child sex tourism with underage children. So there's that comes to my mind. Seeing that on the news, trafficking also comes to mind. That's also a big issue in the world today. So those are just some of the things that come to mind.
mhm. I think of, it's funny. I used to thank you for also including the trigger warning as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so one of the things I used to watch 90 Day Fiance with my mom, which is this show that was interviewed and followed people who would marry people from other countries, and they would get them to the United States through the K-1 visa, which allows you to kind of expedite the process of marrying that person. And without fail, a lot of the times um, there were men, usually marrying women from different countries. And one of the men, his name with this is one of the more prolific couples. There was this guy
Mm-hmm.
named George and Anfisa. Anfisa was from some Eastern European country, and I remember they had asked him, like, and they put it on the show. They had asked him, "Why are you looking for a woman who's in like another country?" And he
Mm-hmm.
said that a lot of women in the U.S. are feminists, and they don't want. He said something to the effect of, uh, they they are too masculine, or they don't want them to kind of take the lead on they want to take the lead on things. So he felt like it sounded like he felt emasculated, which is
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. And it was a commentary that I felt like I saw a lot on social media when it comes to men talking about women in other countries, that they're not as masculine as American women. So I mean that's kind of where it started, or just kind of where I started to hear about men seeking women from other countries, and which kind
Mm,
of ties into sex tourism. I know that's kind of a
yes.
roundabout, but
Yes. Because there is such a thing as romance tourism as well, which we'll get into.
hmm hmm
Yeah.
yeah. So it's to give you just a definition of what we're talking about today. So, what is sex tourism? So, according to the Center for Disease Control, sex tourism is travel for the specific purpose of having sex, typically with commercial sex workers. Um, and I'm pulling from a study from the National Institute of Health called Sun, Sea, and Sex, a review of sex tourism literature. So, it just reviews a lot of the sex tourism, again, the sex tourism studies that have
That have been
uh,
conducted.
yes, that have been
Mhm.
conducted. Um, so I just wanted to get into terminology a little bit. So it highlights transnational sex tourism, which is defined as a travel planned specifically for the purpose of sex, generally to a country where prostitution is legal. So, I mean, there is legal prostitution in the United States only in Nevada and
Mhm.
only in particular in certain counties. So we're specifically talking about transnational sex tourism today, very different from domestic, or not very different, but some different aspects to domestic sex tourism. That's the definition that we're starting off with today, and that's going to be our reference point for just going into the deeper topics. So we are pulling from a study relative to the history of sex tourism. So from Virginia Commonwealth University, there's a professor of the Department of History in the College of Humanities and Sciences for Virginia Commonwealth University. His name is Dr. Christopher Ewing, and he talks about international sex tourism from 1750 to present. So generally, in this course, he investigates how travel provides a means, for middle and upper class European and North Americans to realize sexual fantasies that hinge on racialization and exoticism of people in the global South, while also generating forms of labor migration. Um, so it's a really interesting course. It's just kind of a synopsis of it, and we also provide links to the sources that we discuss here on the podcast. So it starts around 1750, specifically after 1763, um, after the end of the Seven Years' War. We began to make a shift in the focus on the Western European colonialism from the Western Hemisphere towards the Eastern Hemisphere, and specifically looking at French occupation in Algeria beginning in 1830, and then English occupation and entrenchment in India. So, some historical context. And his focus is really on how colonialism structures sexual desire, and then how colonialism structure and travel in the pursuit of sex abroad, and to build from there using colonialism as a framework to look at those international trends and racialized sexual desire that continues today. That's a lot to kind of take in because it's just a lot of historical frameworks. But what he generally wants people to take away is that uh, to have an approach to contemporary issues around sexual tourism that are historically rooted and also super complex. And on one hand, we have to think about exploitation that goes on. On the other hand, we have to allow for room for agency of people of color, sex workers abroad, people engaged in other forms of transactional sex.
This is
Yes.
not new. Sex tourism is not new. It's been going on since it could be traced back to the 1750s.
hmm
And it comes from a time the power dynamics of it are rooted in the way colonial powers took over those that they colonized. So we see
hmm
it with the British in India, the French in Algeria,
hmm
and we see it fast forward today to almost like, I don't want to say a neo-colonial perspective, but like in a new way of seeing
hmm
people who are from different colonial powers or former colonial powers, such as
hmm
Britain, the US, Spain, going to places like Cuba, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, and using it as their sexual playground, essentially, because the
hmm
power of their dollar and their euro and their franc goes further than where the peso or whatever the monetary value of those on the ground or in these developing countries go, how far their money go.
Yeah, that sums it up perfectly, actually. So yeah, we're taking this as, again, just building a framework to be able to understand sex tourism, which we'll go into further details about. So we have the kind of the framework down. We want to talk about who participates in sex tourism. So I'm just referencing the National Institute of Health study, Sons, Sea, and Sex, a review of the sex tourism literature. And these are just some of the findings relative to who participates in sex tourism and just things relative to really important factors of sex tourism.
Mm-hmm.
So it says South and Central America and the Caribbean were more likely to see tourists looking for casual sex. And the
Mm-hmm.
factors associated with casual sex overseas were longer duration of travel, people who were staying greater than a month, traveling alone with friends, alcohol and drug use, and in addition to sex tourism, needs coming to the conclusion that sex tourists need access to HIV prevention methods like PrEP. So they said in some cases, the travelers may engage in sex tourism to validate their own sexual identity with greater freedom that would be allowed in their own more conservative nations, and that men
Mm-hmm.
were more likely to seek out and engage in casual or risky sex behavior, like multiple partners, unprotected intercourse while traveling. And then as many as 1 in 10 men were recorded as having an overseas partner in a British study. So it said, and different categories of male sex tourists have also been proposed in the literature. So ranging from, they had like these categories that they would put them in. So ranging from micro lad or macho lad, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
asserting his dominance over foreign women to the white knight, or saving women from commercial sex work. And there's a study in the United States that showed that female travelers had a greater preference for travel to Europe or tropical countries, and that sex was more likely to occur on group tours, sightseeing, um, or backpacking holidays lasting fewer than 14 days. And female sex tourism um, has also been described in Caribbean destinations as Jamaica, Euro America, and then women purchasing services of so-called rent-a-dreads or local men who seek sexual relationships with tourist women for economic gain. So younger women were reported to preferring expatriates and other tourists as sexual partners, while men of all ages and older women were reported to exercise a preference for local partners. So there were a lot of different aspects of this.
I think a perfect example of what you're talking about, I watched two videos, and at the moment the second video is fleeting my memory, but it will be in our show notes. So the first one is a British grannies preying on Gambian men called Grambia, and it's the only human documentary. And the second one is tourism, when women are looking for love. And both of these focus on women who participate in sex tourism. The Granbia one, which is the grannies from the UK who go to Gambia, where sex tourism is actually, or prostitution, I should say, is actually legal. And they talk about how these women are older, but they prefer the younger local men.
Mhm.
And the same thing for the other documentary, it's younger women who are looking also for men. But what I noticed was there was a couple, Giovanna and Edison, and it takes place in Boca Chica. And Boca Chica is one of the places in the Dominican Republic that they talk about for tourism, especially sexual tourism, where it's high and prevalent, and so is HIV/AIDS transmission. That's also prevalent in the area, because they talk about throughout our research that labor migration ties into or greatly affects the transmission levels of HIV and AIDS, or HIV/AIDS, sorry, because there's like more likely to be alcohol and drugs in migratory areas. You're stepping away from family. You have the secrecy, some of the factors that Celeste was talking about, essentially. And so what was
Yes.
interesting was Giovanna and Edison from the tourism When Women Are Looking for Love. Giovanna was from Italy, this 33-year-old white woman, and Edison was this 18-year-old Dominican Black guy, right? And I was like, 33 and 18, what are you getting out of that? Like he's a fresh adult. and she was taking care of him, and her family was very much against it. And
Mhm.
in the other one, it was reversed, where the men were like in their 20s and 30s. Not necessarily reversed, they were still young, and some of the women were as old as like 70, 80. And they
Mhm.
talked about how like the women are getting scammed, similar to how you see passport bros are getting scammed.
Mhm.
And so it's very interesting that like sex tourism has these different dynamics, but then the question comes about like who has the power and the privilege? Because there's sex workers who are empowered by this. There's sex workers who are getting money and a chance to like take care of their families out of this. But at the same time, should this even exist? Would this even exist if poverty didn't plague some of these countries, such as my home country, Jamaica? And what's going to happen now? Shout out to them dealing with the storm after the aftermath of Melissa. What's going to
Mhm.
happen now in this kind of like dynamic? And so these are things to like really question and talk about, I think, for us as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, like
It's
the
heavy
power of
stuff.
privilege playing out in the bedroom, if you will.
There was another quote that talks about in the study that safe sex behaviors were also shown to be highly dependent on the travel destination.
Mm-hmm.
So a study in Singapore showed that 87.5% of local men used condoms when engaging a sex worker in Singapore, but were traveling. But when traveling, the rate dropped to between 44 and 77%, depending on location. And these findings were supported by research from Hong Kong, which showed that heterosexual men reported lower levels of condom usage when visiting sex workers outside of their own country. Yeah, and
Wait.
proposed that clients of sex workers could facilitate the spread of STIs between nations and networks to a larger degree than sex workers, while also contributing to STI prevalence within their own communities.
Mm.
And then it goes into other associations as well, just again, highlighting some of the takeaways from this study. So the association of sex tourism and casual sex during travel with the spread of novel STIs had long been recognized. It has been suggested that Columbus's sailors were responsible for the epidemic of venereal syphilis in Europe in the late 15th century following sexual relations with local Haitian women, while the link between travel and the spread of STIs were also established in Thailand in the 1980s.
Mm.
So that kind of goes back to historical references, also with labor migration as well. Uh,
And then,
wait, one more.
like you said, them taking it back to their communities.
Hmm.
And one of the articles that I read talked about that, like this idea, like they said, like tourism creates like ecologies or creates like almost like its own communities
Hmm.
around in and around the hotels and the resorts and the beaches where a lot of tourism takes place, etc. And so
Hmm.
what tends to happen is they're in this like bubble, they're in this like pocket
Hmm.
they're in this like pocket away from their family. So the family is often unaware of what they do in the sex work industry. And so when they
Hmm.
go back to their families who might not have, like in rural areas, who don't have sometimes the education or the resources such as prep and things like that, or don't have the power to take prep,
Hmm.
especially for male sex workers, because there's still a power dynamic between females and males. And so it might
Hmm.
be hard for women to be like, I want you to use a condom, or vice versa, even. And so that also creates another problem with the spreading of STIs in a lot of these like countries.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's very unfortunate.
Very much so. Very much so. Um, and these men that travel to different countries, again, this is going towards the at the points in the study that these men come from diverse backgrounds and various employment, but share two common features: high spending power and high mobility. So in the paper, these men are said to frequently use their high spending power and resources to engage in just casual and transactional sex encounters. This group of men was found to be at high risk for HIV. The paper proposed that these men lacked social support and were frequently influenced by the behavior of their peers, while further literature on this subgroup is lacking. Travel to lower income countries, and the resulting increase in spending power for the travelers, having been documented as risk factors for acquisition of STI and HIV. So this would suggest that wealth inequality may have a role in influencing risk behavior in certain individuals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I watched this video with from Vice, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
and it was on YouTube. And like I said, we're gonna put all this in our show notes. But the guys were like coming down with their money to Colombia, going to Colombia with their money, and they're all passport bros. Some of them are what the passport bros call weekend warriors, and weekend warriors come with the passport bro mentality, but they do it in a shorter time frame. So they're there for like a weekend or maybe like 2 weeks, and they don't go there to live and be like digital nomads, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're still a subset of the passport bros. And all in all, passport bros, weekend warriors, whatever you want to call them, they go to these countries, traditionally from Western countries, and they go to these countries where the economic stability is not the best, especially for women who we know are behind that economic line still, right? There's a glass ceiling, all these things, not receiving the same pay. It's just not a fair shake of the lamb tail, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go there and they decide that they want to like uh date these women. But when you watch the Vice documentary, and given it's just a sample, most of the men, you could tell it was just a fucking game. It was just to play with women's emotions and then keep it moving. So it's like you're saying you're looking for traditional women and you're looking for the traditional setup, but make up your mind, because what you're doing is everything but being a traditional man, in the sense of like looking for a family and like, or is that what your definition of a traditional man is, as a passport burner weekend warrior,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the wealth plays a large part. The other part is that they're sleeping with multiple women, and not everybody practices safe sex. So what does that say for the STI spreading? If I'm not mistaken, Dominican Republic has seen an increase in the HIV rate lately. That's been swirling around. But also, they're coming back to the States or going back to their countries sometimes, and they're bringing these things back with them.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, for all the wealth and power, the common sense is just not there. The common decency is just not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 There's actually something in one of these study notes that talk about when doctors try to speak to them about, it says, despite intervention methods, educating men on using condoms and engaging in safe sex practices were unsuccessful when doctors would try to speak with them directly. Written materials and brochures were best to use. Some thought using a condom would ruin the moment, quote. And that's a direct quote from this study. So I guess talking to them directly was unsuccessful, and later on they would dive into some of the materials, the brochures, if you will. So it seemed like indirect communication, kind of just reading the materials, the written materials that were given to them around safe sex, were a bit more successful at kind of convincing them to engage in HIV prevention methods and safe sex prevention methods.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows if that's ego, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Yeah.
Sure either.
And yeah, so while a detailed consideration of the impact of sex tourists on sex tourism destinations is beyond the scope of current work, some key issues are worthy of discussion. Local cultural attitudes towards sex tourism are complex and are influenced by harsh economic conditions, where impoverished families may find themselves with few options for survival and have to resort to sending their children to urban centers visited by sex tourists. There may be expectation in some cultures that children will share the family's financial burden. Remittances from a family member engaged in the sex tourism industry may be vital to enable families to improve their quality of life. Child sex tourism produces a detrimental impact on the children's capacity to achieve their goals within the education system. Sex tourism may reinforce traditional colonial attitudes towards race and gender, which serve to deepen existing socioeconomic inequalities. Local communities are often reluctant to intervene in cases of child sexual exploitation, given the complex underlying economic um, precipitants and the greater level of public acceptability of prostitution in some countries. Such attitudes render children far more vulnerable to being absorbed by the adult sex trade and becoming sexually exploited by sex tourists, who may use the anonymity afforded by the dark web as a global networking tool to share information with other sex tourists. But yeah, that's pretty heavy stuff, and kind of starts to go into what Otasha was talking about, countries that are in more precarious socioeconomic situations, and how things become laxed for people because they don't have a lot of options, about how sex tourists can take advantage of some of our most vulnerable in society,
Mm-hmm.
which is children.
Mm-hmm.
So it's heavy stuff, really terrible,
Yeah,
but the yeah.
I I watched one other documentary. It was like a short one. It was like a report,
Mhm.
and they were in Pattaya. I think is that Bangladesh? Was it Bangladesh or is it somewhere else? But they were in this place called Pattaya. It was in an Asian country, and forgive me for not. I want to say it was Thailand that it took place in, and
Mhm.
I hope I'm saying that correctly. And they were talking about the fact that this man from a European country, I don't want to get it wrong. I want to say it was Norway, but you'll be able to watch the documentary if you'd like, because it's going to be in our show notes, as we said.
Mhm.
And they interviewed a few people, but one of the people they interviewed was a man who was charged with sleeping with underage girls. And
Mhm.
at first, he evaded authority. No, he got caught, and he bribed somebody to leave. Once again,
Mhm.
money and wealth taking the power play,
Mhm.
and he was able to flee back to his country. However, the country where he was arrested somehow never reported him to the country that he ran back to, that he fled to,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so he was still walking around free. And when they interviewed him, it was very evident and clear that he was a pedophile, and he knew that these girls were underage.
Mhm.
And the way he talked about them, he used a particular term, and it was like he said they were like that they were um like cattle almost. Like
Mhm.
the supply is there, was what he was saying. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so disheartening. He doesn't even see them as human. And this was a
Mhm.
white man. And so the question starts to come in, and I think one of our studies talked about this, that a lot of the sex tourism is based heavily as well on racism,
Mhm.
on sexism.
Spotting the course by Dr. Ewing that talks about how there's like a heavy racial element to this sex tourism as well. But yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, and so it's it's once again talking about that power play, that power and privilege coming into sight more clearly, the pattern of behavior, because they talked about how a lot of men are coming to the country. I want to say it was Thailand, Pattaya, Thailand, and they were saying how a lot of people are coming into the country and the young girls are getting preyed on. But if you asked one of the German bar owners there, he was like, "Oh no, that doesn't happen." And then they interviewed one of the guys that openly had a sex worker with him, and he was like, "Oh no, she's more of a girlfriend. It's the romance tourism aspect." And but they're overlooking or undermining how bad of an effect this has on these women. And
Mhm.
one of the guys said something to the extent, it was very naive of them, or perhaps they just didn't want to admit it on camera. They were saying
Mhm.
like, oh no, the violence isn't that bad, and they get to set the price, and they say what they want to. And perhaps for some that's the case, but it's not always the case. And so I think sex tourism is almost like a belly of the beast type of thing, and only if
Yeah.
you get out, you know what I mean? Like there's one woman who said she was like doing it for her child, like you said, the remittances and sending money back. When we looked at like Senegal and Jamaica, the news stories that we read, they were also sending money back to family. When you look at tourism industry, if it's, you know, being like the crux of some of these like societies like economy, a lot of people are sending money back, but at what cost to themselves? Women are being raped, assaulted, violated. Children are being raped, assaulted, violated. And there's only so many people out there helping them. In Pattaya, they did have an organization that was helping, but they could only do so much, you know, especially if it's not being reported.
Yeah. 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 It creates such a power imbalance. It's terrible.
Yeah. And then you have to deal with the stigma that sex workers still face to this day, where people don't see it as work, but also it's so like devalued as a part of the economy, despite what we just talked about, that remittances are sent back to family, that they're also contributing to the labor force, if you will, right? But it's also like they interviewed officers in Jamaica, and a woman was essentially violated. She showed up for a sex job, and then when she showed up, the guys got brutal with her. And the police officers were laughing about it. It was like, sex workers can't be raped. What do you mean? It's just that they didn't get paid, so they get mad. And I'm like,
Right.
when did this study take place? 2016, 2018. It's my memory's not the best, y'all. Forgive me. But yeah, it happened somewhat recently, like in the past, like maybe like 8 years. And this is still the mindset of people who are supposed to serve and protect, essentially, regardless of what country they're in. So
Right.
it's such a double-edged sword. You're damned if you don't, because your family and yourself need to survive. Damned if you do, because once you start becoming a sex worker, then you have sex tourists who, like one woman said, don't even say hello. They just push you on the bed. Women have been gang raped. Male sex workers have been gang raped because some of them are children and they don't have anybody defending them. So these passport bros and passport girlies, it seems harmless, but it really does come at a cost.
Very
It
much so.
really does happen at a cost.
Yeah, I wanted to draw kind of from your point about older middle-aged women from the Gambia, or older middle-aged white women usually going to participate in sex tourism. Now, that's not something that you would usually expect relative to sex tourism. You'd think, or just I guess the common man would think, or the common person would think, men and passport bros. Are involved in this action, but actually, it. Thank you for stating that it includes women as well. I wanted to read a quote from a Substack by Jessica Bindell that quotes that UK researchers Jacqueline Sanchez Taylor and Julia O'Connell Davidson, found that the usual analysis of sex tourism does not allow for the possibility of women as buyers of sexual services because prostitute users are by definition male, and this assumption is shared by many researchers and theorists. The two researchers interviewed 240 women holidaying or kind of going out traveling in Negril and two similar resorts in the Dominican Republic. Almost a third of the interviewees had engaged in sexual relationships with local men in the course of their holiday. Though 60% admitted to certain economic elements to the liaisons, they did not perceive their sexual encounter as prostitute client transactions, nor did they view their sexual partners as prostitutes. End quote.
Wow.
Yeah. The disassociation is really interesting. And that same article kind of goes on to say, this woman is kind of interviewing and talking to these other women that are in Jamaica at the time and engaging in purchasing or relationships with these young men. And they're talking about how much they like their skin and, how, there's these black men have like there's like a direct quote, I can't find it at this time, but how they have this stronger sexual prowess, kind of this exoticism, again, that was stated before. I just wanted to add that, but that's kind of the end of creating or more so reliance on that study, just kind of understanding where this comes from, who engages in it, and then aspects of it that are so prevalent in sex tourism.
Mm.
So I don't know if we want to go into some of the examples. I know you talked about a lot of them already, but some of the examples that you were stating.
One of them that I looked at, the one with the 18 and 33-year-old, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
They talked about how they interviewed somebody, and he was like one of the main guys who's a sex tourist. Sorry, not a sex tourist, a sex worker.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that it was like what it comes down to, like you were saying, the exoticism, the
Mm-hmm.
penis size is
Mm-hmm.
like what did he call them? Milk bottles. They call white women milk. They used to call them milk bottles because of
Mm-hmm.
which is very interesting. Some of the Bayesian men on the beaches are from Barbados were being interviewed, and some of the women who were there too. And if memory serves me right, the guy was saying that a lot of what happens is they want to come and they want to have fun, the penis size. But one of the downsides to it was because there's so many sex workers in the tourist area, some of the women who were non-participants in sex work were being harassed. And the guy in the Gambia documentary talks about the same thing, that he went out with a friend and people thought that he was also a sex worker until he opened him out and started speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, they still tried with you because the women were still trying to touch him. And he was like, no, I'm not into that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the women were talking about the fact that they all think that we're here for sex. Like they all think that's what we're here for now, because it's like a drawback to the sex work and like what's happening with sex tourism. So the stereotypes are like prevalent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I also wanted to share. There was another quote that another quote from the Substack article that I was reading. So she was interviewing someone named Robin who has regular girlfriends that take him shopping and give him money to spend. So he was just kind of talking about his experience. He says that this is the direct quote: his favorite tourists are Black Americans because they have fewer hangups than others. Although he likes being seen with white women, he says in quotes, I can get a Black woman anytime. Like the other bald heads, he is bald heads, meaning like he's cut his hair. He is critical of rented dreads. They grow their hair for the tourists because they all want to fuck Bob Marley, but no way are they real Rastas. Anyway, he's just talking about how like he likes being seen with white women, or the status that is kind of portrayed being seen with white women. Just kind of going on to like the racialization and what that means, being seen with certain people.
Yeah, because one of the guys in the Gambian documentary, he talks about the fact that he said, I'm a poor, I don't want to be with a poor Gambian girl. Like, I don't want to be with a poor Black Gambian girl. And I was like, oh my gosh, what does that do for the dating dynamics now in Gambia? Given not every single Gambian man is a sex worker, but like, how does that shift the dynamic in the dating pool? For a lot of like DR, Jamaica, Colombia, how do the actions of this like smaller group affect the larger group in question? Because like, if you don't want to date them and you're in you're of dating age, marriage age and stuff like that, doesn't that like take away from the pool, But some of them were saying like they only want these older white women because like they're poor or because they'll support their family. Like one guy, and I almost felt bad for her. She moved into the house. He built the house using majority her funds. Or both their funds together, sorry. And when she moved there, they interviewed her and everything was fine. Never had an argument, everything is peachy keen, whatever it may be. Well, fast forward to like a month later, they might have interviewed them, and his whole family has now moved into the house. His sister, his brother, his mom.
Mhm.
You know,
Mm.
his whole family is moving into the house. And there's
Mhm.
another guy who was like with an 85-year-old woman, he said, or 75-year-old woman,
Oh
and
my
he never told
gosh.
his mom. And when he got married, they said you had to watch out for this. Only his boys were there.
Mhm. Mm.
No,
Mhm.
and we know enough to know about African culture. When you're getting married, the family has to be present, right?
Yes.
We've seen the
Mhm.
from the Nollywood movie to the actual YouTube videos of weddings online to all
Mhm.
of it. We know as like now, after seeing countless weddings, if there's one thing that is true, the family must be present. And so they
Mhm.
warn women, watch out for it when it's only his boys that are there, and only
Mhm.
their boys were there for the wedding.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, but it also goes back to the question of like, what does that do for the dating dynamic?
Yeah.
When you think the best status is for to have a white woman on your arm, can you truly
Mhm.
respect a black woman? What does that do for the dating dynamic when you have these pools of STIs going around,
Mhm.
for lack of a better term, and you're bringing it back to your neighborhood or your community? What does that do to those women?
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 That's a lot. That's a lot.
So it seems seemingly harmless, but clearly it's not.
Yeah.
A lot of people get caught up in the sex tourism and what it does to a community or to a country.
Yeah, it seems like people are and it's before I kind of read a lot about this and saw some of the documentaries that you were talking about. I just
Mm-hmm.
kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, well, if they're consenting adults for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
they're consenting adults, like why should I care about any of this? Or
Mm-hmm.
they should be able to do whatever they want to, but just the aspects of it make it so complex and such a
Yes.
really just effed up situation, messed up situation, I should say, that you can't possibly feel like you can be on the fence about something like that because it contributes to so many damning factors,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to uh, child sex abuse
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is so unfortunate to hear.
yeah, very much so. I don't know if you wanted to still go into more detail relative to any of the examples that you provided.
Um, I think one of the interesting patterns to note about like these people that
Mhm,
do sex tourism is that, or not a pattern, but it was just a behavior that I noticed. And let me make this clear, like I am not a researcher. I am just seeing what I observed. But it was interesting to see how the women sex tourists
mhm,
started falling faster into romance tourism,
mhm,
and how for most of the guys, it was just straight fucking.
mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Because I watched this thing called, what's it called? Love Rats?
Yes, I was one of the Love Rat episodes. I'm not sure if you're talking about the one where the woman was a drummer and she married somebody
Yes.
from okay, yeah.
And she also went and got somebody from Gambia, I think.
Uh-huh. Yes, yes.
And everybody was like, uh, it was only his friends that were there. He valued the
Mhm.
marriage certificate more than he valued her.
Yes.
He
Mhm.
was he was looking for his way out before they even begun, because he was
Mhm.
writing like a how to get a divorce, um, not manifesto but document.
Mhm.
And this is happening with men all over, but it's majority white women who are getting caught up because that's who they see the status in, and that's who they think can take them out of the country that they're in. Going back to the power play once again. But it was just very interesting to see that the women fall into the romance tourism more often than
Mhm.
not,
Mhm.
um, and how it like destroyed them, because the drummer woman, she got left. Was it her that got left in debt, or was the other woman who married the man from like Morocco? and then he contacted her years later saying, "Can you raise my child?" Oh, the audacity
Mm,
of men from any corner of the world, y'all.
yeah.
But it was interesting to see the pattern of behavior that took place for sure. I'm not sure
Mhm.
what that all means, that one fell more for romance tourism than the other. But I think it's a very interesting to note that these men who are saying that they're going to these countries to find a traditional wife and be a traditional man are doing more fucking than actually looking for relationships.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Um, yeah, it ties me back to, again, my mom and I used to watch what is it called? 90 Day Fiance, and just the
Mhm.
dynamics that you see. It's kind of like a light or diet version of these kind of deeper concepts um, around just this passport bros, essentially, like people who are just looking, or men who are looking to be able to exercise or use their socioeconomic status in other countries to be able to pull more well, to get women to do whatever they want to do, or to
Mhm.
control. Like they just want to
Mhm.
feel like they're in control. So yeah, it's like 90 Day Fiance kind of bringing that. Um, it kind of just introducing that, or just kind of you just see certain dynamics all of the time. There's always, without fail, every season, there's always a man bringing a
Mhm.
woman from another country to be able to live with him, or what have you, even though he's, and the woman is usually surprised. It's usually, more often than not, they're usually surprised. And I hate to use this as a reference point, but this was my entry point. um,
Mhm.
the women are usually surprised to know that, oh, they don't really have as much money, or they don't, they're not really
Yeah.
as as powerful as they make it out to be. It's just, it's interesting. It's interesting. It's like
Nice.
90 Day Fiance the other way, and there was this woman she was from a South American country. I don't remember which one,
Mhm.
but it was this man who came over to be able to spend time with her, and he really, really liked her. And she talked about how disgusted she was with his behavior, like the fact that he would be talking to her and then just all of a sudden burp in her
Oh.
face. The fact that he was just kind of farting everywhere, it just kind of those like things that is just like, can you, that's kind of inappropriate. Do you have any, how do I say this? Any
Mm.
kind of manners? It seems like
Mhm.
they use their passport and their money, the little money that they have, to be able to escape any kind of responsibility. Um,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
know I'm like repeating what you had said,
No, it's like they
but
use it to circumvent having standards.
yes, yes, yes,
Yes, or being a
exactly.
standard. And
Yes.
let me point this out. We would be remiss to say that there aren't women who are empowered by
Mhm,
being sex workers, because there are women who are and men who are, because it,
mhm.
it it affords them the ability to do what they want to do with their lives. So we're not saying that this is every case, every scenario, everybody, but
Yes.
we have to look at the atrocities of sex tourism.
Mhm. Yes, yes. Thank you for making that point.
Do you think you could ever do sex work, Celeste, of any kind?
um, let's see.
You don't
If
have
I
to answer
was
that. Celeste. You don't have to answer that. Sorry, I don't know what that came from.
if I was in if you were to tell me, 10 years ago, I was 23 years old, I could like send feet pics or something, or like have a guy like buy me stuff or whatever, that I would definitely be open to that. Because
Mm-hmm.
it excuse me, because it seems like it makes so much sense now. Um, but yeah, right now, no, no, not at all. What about you? What about you? So now it's like too little too late. Like, I'm not interested in any of that.
No, I couldn't do it. I don't think I have the patience and the wherewithal that it takes to be a sex worker. Because
Okay, yeah.
those women and men are like troopers. Because like
Mhm,
think about it, like somebody you're not attracted to on top of
mhm,
you, and you got to do what you got to do to survive. But I just don't think I had the wherewithal. And then there's
mhm,
so much violence that they have to endure.
mhm.
It's yeah.
Mm, yeah, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. I sometimes I'll follow like sex workers or what have you on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
There's this one sex worker who she's a stripper. So she kind of talks about her experience as a stripper. You kind of follow her to like go into like clubs or whatever. She shows certain things and doesn't show others.
Mm-hmm.
But she'll have reels where she had this reel once where she was dancing on a customer and they like smacked her in the face. Yeah, so apparently dealing with assault, people feeling like they can assault and completely like disrespect sex
Yeah.
workers is a
Yeah.
common thing, and you just kind of
Mm-hmm.
have to shake it off and move on. At that time, when she had posted that, she said that she's like, I just got assaulted right now. I'm just gonna go home and whatever, just kind of end the night there. But then, she has to go back to the same club the next day and just kind of shake it off. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, if anything, I think for the most part they have security and the security like, kicks the guy out or whatever, but it's not anything that you can go to the police, but kind of what you had said before, how police or law enforcement treats uh, situations
Mm-hmm.
of sexual assault, especially for sex workers,
Mm-hmm.
it's dismissed. It's
It's
dismissed.
dismissed. Yeah, it's not taken seriously by a lot of them,
Yeah.
which is very unfortunate. And then sometimes you have police officers who engage because the sex workers in Jamaica that were interviewed talk
Hmm.
about sometimes that the cops themselves will violate them.
Hmm.
So it's like, who do you turn to?
Yeah. I'm curious, was the first time you kind of heard about passport bros?
The first time I heard about Passport Bros, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago,
Hmm.
but I don't remember in what capacity. I don't know if I
Hmm.
was just watching something on like movies or something on social media, but maybe about 2 or so years ago.
Hmm.
That's what I think. That's when I think I started hearing about Passport Bros.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
it was like heard that then I started hearing like a country had like they call them something else in like an Asian country. I can't remember what it's called, but it
Hmm.
wasn't complimenting. It was like losers in their own country, like something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. Like
Yeah.
losers in their own country, and
It was
then
something
like
to that extent. Like they can't make it in their own country, so here they are being passport bros.
I see. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Because
That
they
makes
think with
sense.
the wealth and power that they have, the little that stretches far. But what I've also been seeing with passport bros is that similar to the Gambian women or women who marry men abroad
Hmm.
from um, romance tourism, um, they are now feeling the brunt of their decisions because they're coming back with the women and the women are realizing that these men are garbage. Like there was a Filipino woman and a white man, and it was a
Hmm.
whole thing on social media. He had posted like, I'm in the basement, they're opening gifts without me, da 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 da. And people were like, so you put yourself in the basement and you're blaming them? Like he was rude and disrespectful to her family. Like it was a whole scenario. I wish I could find it. And he basically like did something disrespectful,
Hmm.
um, but people were skewering him. He posted it to get, I guess, people on his side.
Yeah.
It didn't work out, but he was also a passport bro. He went,
Hmm.
he like said, I found a wife, and he was like, don't bring your woman back here. They'll
Hmm.
change on you. But when he was telling the story, people were like, it's you. You're the villain. You're the problem. And
Hmm.
I've seen more passport bros posting about that, like don't bring your woman back, isolate her, things to do to make sure she never changes.
Hmm.
It's just cringe behavior. It's just really cringe behavior.
Right. Right. So, I mean, what do we do with all of this information?
Good question.
There's a lot that's kind of been exchanged between us,
Mm-hmm.
and I just want like, what is the like a major takeaway? So, so what? Why is this? I mean, it
Important.
gives you context, framework,
Mhm.
examples.
The point of this all takes us into the next section, which is called tea time. And tea time is where you spill your guts, just like we've been spilling our guts about our thoughts and emotions and what we feel about this and our research that we've done. Um, so, to the passport bros and girlies, what is the motivational factors for why you are really a passport bro or girly? For people who never participated in sex work before, do you believe that passport bros and girlies are really looking for love? or who've never been passport bros and girlies themselves, do you really believe that passport bros and girlies are looking for love? And for the sex workers, tell us your experience. Do you feel empowered, or do you feel like this is a challenging lifestyle? I guess that's an obvious thing, but you know, that's part of tea time. And then in some, I guess what we wanted to do was just to highlight the atrocities of this. Like, we crack jokes about passport bros, but it goes both ways. Women are engaging in this behavior too, so to highlight that, but also to highlight that children are being affected by this, and that this isn't just some like quick social media like punchline. This is a really major issue. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good way to summarize everything, and just because it's very heavy and you just want to know, like, what do I take away from this? That's perfect. And then please send those answers to the ochatbar@gmail.com. Or then you can write it in the comments. And then we also have a number. I almost forgot. We have a number that you can call for the OC chat bar to be able to answer.
And in the meantime, we would like to do top shelf liquor behavior, which is essentially our shout outs. We had a few comments on the last video, which we really appreciated.
Oh, I just wanted to interject. Sorry. The Google Voice number that we have, you can send a voicemail of any of your answers of anything that we've discussed today at 443-478-3667. Again, that's 443-478-3667.
All right, so back to top shelf liquor behavior, which is essentially our shout outs. We want to say to our friends and community, thank you for the feedback on our show.
Thank you.
And then also, thank you so much, and thank you for commenting. So one of the comments that we have from Mayor Bubbles, I like that name. That's a fun name. This is from our first episode, and if you haven't watched it, please go ahead and watch it. I think it's great. We loved doing it. It's called Problematic Faves. But for Mayor Bubbles, she said, I was surprised how many people I know who go to Chris Brown concerts, literally flying to a different state. I thought I was losing my mind, but why are his songs so catchy? Right? And when we talked about problematic faves, it's the people that people love that are so problematic that we have to question, should we still be engaging with their work and them? And she's right. The Chris Brown songs are catchy, but he is a problematic man, especially when it comes to Black women.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So you have to make your own rules around that, if it's worth it or not.
Yeah, that's true. And then from Desiree A321 comes, my problematic fave is definitely Kanye. I still listen to his old music. I think my red line is people like Drake, R. Kelly, Woody Allen, Roman Polanski, and so on. I've given up a lot of great music and films for this. So Desiree has drawn her line. She said where her line is, which is totally understandable, especially with somebody like R. Kelly and Woody Allen who preyed on young. So I totally understand that. And then our last comment coming from Gaff Girl Band J5972. I think who gets effectively canceled depends on the same things as everything else. Money first and foremost, power, and essentially the social caste. I'm not surprised a Black woman got effectively canceled, but all these men are frolicking free. Trump is president and Diddy actually went to trial. They gave us someone, but I imagine they can only do so much because Trump and Diddy were at the same parties. Ooh. Ooh.
She got us with that one. Got them with that one.
That is so true. Like, it's interesting who effectively gets canceled, right? That it's Black women like Chrisette and Janet Jackson, but the men are left free despite all the things that they do that are so atrocious, right?
Yes.
And so she's right. They did try to give us someone in a way, but if him and Diddy and Trump are in cahoots, he'll probably be pardoned sooner or later.
Yes.
That's my theory. That's our theory.
I think P. Diddy only got like 2 years. It's like 2 years.
Wow. Why am I not even, you know what? I'm so shocked. I'm almost surprised. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. But top shelf liquor. Thank you guys so much for responding. Thank you guys for your shout outs. Thank you for supporting us.
Yes, we really do appreciate and echo everything that Celeste just said. And as a last call, remember once again, it's the ochatbar@gmail.com. Our Instagram is the ochatbar, and our number is 443-478-3667. reach us however you need to. Thank you guys for listening.